For decades, Britain's been one of the richest countries in Europe, a leader in finance, trade, and industry. Yet, in recent years, a series of sobering reports have suggested that the United Kingdom may soon fall behind countries it once outpaced by a wide margin, including Poland, a nation long viewed as a rising but still developing European economy. The suggestion that UK living standards may trail those in Poland represents more than just a symbolic reversal. It highlights deep challenges within Britain's economic model, energy policy, and productivity growth. Two sets of analysis shed important light on this development. One comes from Peel Hunt, a respected brokerage which explores whether the UK lacks the energy foundation necessary to support productivity growth. The other, published by Su Ping Chan, economics editor for The Telegraph, suggests that Britain's energy transition, while environmentally necessary, has inadvertently made families poorer. Taken together, they paint a picture of a country caught between the demands of decarbonisation and the pressing need for economic competitiveness. In this video, we'll explore why some analysts believe the UK risks falling behind Poland in living standards, the central role energy policy has played, and what this could mean for the country's future. One of the most pressing concerns in the UK economy is productivity, the measure of how efficiently goods and services are produced. Productivity growth has long been a key driver of rising living standards. Yet, as Peel Hunt notes, Britain has experienced nearly 20 years of weak productivity growth, a trend that worsened following the 2008 financial crisis. The report highlights that productivity is intimately linked to energy use. Callum Pickering, Peel Hunt's chief economist, states directly, "If an economy throttles its production of energy, it impairs its capacity to produce other types of goods and services. Productivity is the single driver of per capita GDP. The consequence is that British workers are no longer seeing the same gains in output or wages that competitors in other countries are experiencing. Living standards, measured in GDP per capita, have slipped accordingly." Analysis has underscored another dimension. Britain's energy transition has made families poorer. Analysis by Peel Hunt showed a precipitous decline in electricity supply since the early 2000s coincided with much slower growth in living standards. The investment bank argued that the two were intrinsically linked. Callum Pickering, Peel Hunt's chief economist, summarised it bluntly. Put simply, once the economy started to decarbonise, the trend rate of productivity slowed sharply. The findings also noted if an economy throttles its production of energy, it impairs its capacity to produce other types of goods and services. Rising consumer prices for energy and structural changes to Britain's energy mix, such as the closure of coal plants and limited expansion of nuclear power, have added further strain. Donald Trump has reversed many of the US government's green initiatives since coming to power, and Chris Wright, the US Energy Secretary, has said that Britain's sinister goal of hitting net zero by 2050 is making millions of households poorer. Miss Reeves, the Chancellor, has insisted that there is no trade-off between economic growth and net zero. Quite the opposite. Net zero is now one of the most controversial subjects in British politics. It has its supporters who see it as essential to tackling climate change and its detractors who argue it's driving up costs for households and businesses. Factually, net zero has not lowered energy prices so far, and in some cases the transition has temporarily raised them. This is one of the key reasons why Ed Miliband, the Secretary of State for Energy, Security and Net Zero, is so heavily criticised and scrutinised. There are credible reports that during the recent cabinet reshuffle, Prime Minister Keir Starmer tried to move Ed Miliband out of his energy net zero role into another department, housing, but Miliband refused. As ITV's Robert Peston reported on the Rest is Money podcast, Ed Miliband is said to have defied a bid by Sir Keir Starmer to remove him from the energy department and give him Angela Rayner's department. The controversial Energy Secretary, who has become a lightning rod for right-wing attacks on the Labour government because of his commitment to tackling climate change, was offered the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, IT political editor Robert Peston has claimed on the Rest is Money podcast. Mr. Miliband apparently point-blank refused to quit his energy secretary job, where he's been on a mission to shut down carbon-powered energy and replace it with solar and wind farms. In the end, the job went to former Environment Secretary Steve Reed, who has a background in local government. But the attempted move appears to be related to concerns that Mr. Miliband's climate change measures are fueling support for Nigel Farage's Reform UK. Currently, Reform has a 10-point lead over Labour, and Mr. Farage has vowed to scrap net zero measures. This episode underlines how politically controversial net zero has become. For Labour, it's meant to be a flagship policy, proof they're serious on climate. But for critics, it's a costly project that hasn't yet delivered. UK households still face some of the highest energy bills in Europe, and there's little sign of net zero cutting prices anytime soon. That gap between promise and reality is fueling frustration. Reform UK has seized on it, now leading Labour in some polls by double digits. Starmer's attempt to shift Miliband shows he knows energy costs are becoming a political liability. Yet Miliband, seen as the poster boy for net zero, dug in, refusing to budge. His stance keeps Labour tied to an agenda that is proving politically controversial. While Britain has struggled, Poland has surged. Since joining the European Union in 2004, Poland has experienced rapid economic growth, driven by manufacturing, foreign investment, and rising productivity. Peel Hunt's analysis suggests that by around 2030, Polish GDP per capita, measured in purchasing power terms, could overtake the UK. Manufacturing-led growth. Poland remains a hub for European manufacturing, benefiting from integration into German supply chains. Energy affordability. While Poland faces its own challenges in decarbonisation, its continued reliance on coal has kept energy costs relatively competitive. EU structural funds. Billions in EU investments have modernised infrastructure and boosted growth. One of the key themes emerging from Peel Hunt's analysis is the role of policy choices. Britain has made significant commitments to net zero, enshrined in law in 2019, requiring greenhouse gas emissions to reach net zero by 2050. While the environmental rationale is clear, the economic costs have been substantial. Peel Hunt stresses that 2 decades of experience suggest otherwise. The result of the UK's decarbonisation efforts is, for example, to weaken economic growth, high energy prices, deindustrialisation, and no significant impact on the overall trajectory of global emissions. UK data supports this picture. Growth and productivity have stagnated for nearly 2 decades, electricity bills remain among the highest in Europe, manufacturing's share of GDP has fallen below 10%, and while Britain has cut its own emissions by more than half since 1990, its small share of global output means the overall trajectory of worldwide emissions remains largely unchanged, especially as countries like China and India continue to increase theirs. At the same time, the UK has underinvested in alternative energy solutions such as nuclear power. One data point stood out. UK electricity consumption per person was roughly the same as the US level in 2005, with living standards roughly 75% of the US level. By 2022, energy consumption had declined to around 65% of the US level, while per capita GDP had fallen to 62%. Beyond abstract statistics, the question of living standards is deeply felt in daily lives. For families, it means whether wages stretch far enough to cover housing, energy bills, food, and other essentials. Analysts emphasise that Britain's energy transition has raised costs across these areas, contributing to a squeeze on disposable incomes. Meanwhile, Peel Hunt's findings suggest that the decline in per capita energy use is directly connected to stagnating wages. In the past, higher energy availability allowed Britain to sustain rising incomes and prosperity. Today, the reverse is true. Constrained energy supply has coincided with weaker pay growth. It's important to recognise that Britain's struggles are not unique. Across Europe, productivity growth has slowed, and energy transition policies have added to the challenge. Germany, once seen as Europe's industrial powerhouse, has faced its own crisis as energy prices surged following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. However, Britain's problems appear more acute. Unlike Germany, which still retains significant manufacturing capacity, the UK has deindustrialised more thoroughly. Its service-led economy depends heavily on stable energy supplies, but energy costs have remained high. Peel Hunt points out that the UK's trajectory diverged sharply from the US. The US has been successful in lifting standards while keeping per capita energy consumption roughly stable. The UK has seen living standards broadly stable while cutting per capita energy consumption. For policymakers, the prospect of UK living standards slipping behind Poland is politically fraught. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has pledged to raise living standards across the country, yet the evidence from Peel Hunt and other analysts suggests this may be harder than expected. As Pickering remarked, our analysis challenges the government's claim that there is no trade-off. Poland's rise offers several lessons for the UK. Energy affordability matters. When households face high bills, disposable income shrinks, leaving less to spend in the wider economy. For businesses, expensive electricity and gas mean higher production costs, reduced profit margins, and weaker international competitiveness. Countries with more affordable energy can attract investment, keep factories running, and maintain jobs that might otherwise move abroad. Affordable energy also gives governments more fiscal breathing space as they spend less on subsidies or emergency price caps. In short, keeping energy costs under control isn't just about easing pressure on families, it's a cornerstone of long-term economic strength and competitiveness. The idea that UK living standards could fall behind Poland's was once unthinkable, yet today the data suggests it may soon become a reality. Peel Hunt's research shows that Britain's productivity slowdown is closely linked to declining energy use, while other analysts highlight the real-world cost to families of the energy transition. As one analysis bluntly stated, Britain's net zero drive has made families poorer. That line captures both the economic and political challenge facing the UK. None of this implies that decarbonisation should be abandoned. Climate change remains an urgent challenge, but it does suggest that Britain needs a more balanced strategy, one that secures affordable energy, supports productivity, and ensures that families don't bear disproportionate costs. If living standards do indeed slip behind Poland, it will be a wake-up call that cannot be ignored. Net zero remains one of the most controversial policy choices in government today. For some, it's essential to fighting climate change. For others, it's a costly agenda that hasn't yet delivered lower bills or stronger growth. What do you think? Is net zero worth the price, or should Britain rethink its approach? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this.